All right. But I thought because it's so complicated, I thought that the very first thing we might do is to walk through a kind of general timeline of the events. I know this is small, this is about as best I could do, and I'm going to explain all of it. So, here is what has happened in the last week. Oh, I don't want my red background. That's my Socialism Saturday background. Actually, you know what? Let's do the gold background. We're talking about libertarian stuff, so we'll do the gold background for today. So, let me get this up where I can read it. So, I'm going to walk you through this timeline and then we're going to back up and I'm going to go through all of this in more detail and show you the receipts for all of this. So this all started for me on Monday. When on Monday, Jeff Douglas, who is the national coordinator again for the Mises Caucus, contacted me. He gave me a whole half-hour long speech about why I really needed to step up and to be a state organizer for the Mises Caucus. Now, when this happened, I was, quite frankly, that was not what I was expecting at all. I thought that when Jeff Douglas reached out to me, he was looking for information about what was going on in New Hampshire because I had told Michael Heiss and I had told Angela McArdle, who, by the way, Angela McArdle, who's the national chair of the Libertarian Party, has tried to stay out of this. She really has. To the very best of my knowledge, Angela is not really involved in any of this, but occasionally I like to send Angela an update here or there, just so she's aware of what's going on. Not that she needs to do anything about it, but just so she's aware. And so I had told Michael Heiss and Angela that I was not happy with what was going on in New Hampshire. So I thought that Jeff Douglas was reaching out to me to basically find out more about why I wasn't happy with what was going on in New Hampshire. And then he gave me this whole half-hour long speech about how effed up everything was, which I actually generally agreed with what he said. And then he said, Carlin, I need you to step up. And I need you to be a state organizer for the Mises Caucus. And I was kind of like, there were several reasons why I didn't say yes. Number one reason why is I finally gotten myself to a place where I'm focusing on what I want to focus on. And I have my own projects and I have my own stuff that I want to do. And I already have more to do than I can reasonably handle. And I wanted to be able to focus on that. So then throwing in this other thing of being like a state organizer, which by the way, I don't even know what that means, was like, Jeff, I'm already working like 15 hours a day as it is on my own stuff. I don't know that I have time to actually do this. Number two, I didn't know if it was even possible to revitalize the Mises Caucus in New Hampshire. And we're going to talk about why, but let me give you the too long didn't read. Several months ago, Michael Heiss did something that really pissed off the then chair of the LPNH and the communications committee, and they have spent the last several months basically shit talking Michael Heiss and the Mises Caucus, which has made the Mises Caucus relatively toxic in New Hampshire. Now, that's not to say that everyone was opposed to them. Okay, because they were not opposed to them. There are many, 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 many people in New Hampshire that up until this past week were perfectly open to working with the Mises Caucus, and I was one of those people. I never left the Mises Caucus. So it wasn't as though I wasn't open to working with them, but it was like in terms of trying to organize on a state level, I was like, I don't know if this is even a possibility given the amount of vitriol and negativity towards the Mises Caucus that these idiots, and I say that with love for most of them, I really do, that these idiots have drummed up over the last several months. So I didn't even know if it was possible. Thirdly, I, you know, I wanted to be able to think about it. I didn't want to have to say yes right away. And so what I told Jeff Douglas on the phone was that, thank you, I'm flattered for the offer. I need to think about this and to even see if this is like something that A, I can do, B, is something I want to do, C, is something that has any hope of being successful at all. Now, in conjunction with this, I was already talking to a couple people in New Hampshire who have been less than impressed with the running of the Twitter and in the libertarian messaging coming out of New Hampshire about possibly doing something in order to diversify the amount of libertarian voices in New Hampshire. And so I had already been doing that anyway. And so in my head, I was kind of like, you know what? What if we could do this project where we want to elevate more diverse libertarian voices separate from what the party's doing because we don't think that that's really 100% hitting the mark? What if we could do this other project and maybe align with the Mises Caucus organizing apparatus to help us achieve this project? So what happened with me is I thought about the offer that Jeff gave me for a couple days. I made a bunch of phone calls. I talked to people both about the project that I was already doing anyway and about this offer from the Mises Caucus. And I was like, maybe these two things are actually aligned, and maybe we can use it to align people around the idea of having more diverse messaging and maybe showing up at the convention and maybe getting more people on our side. Because I'm going to tell you this, if I was trying to take over, quote unquote, take over the New Hampshire Libertarian Party, what I would do is I would try to form a diverse coalition of libertarians from across the state of New Hampshire. I would try to elevate more libertarian voices than are being elevated right now. I would get people on board by actually producing something of value. I would actually build something to show I'm not just talking here. We've actually got something and we're helping people and we want you involved and we want you involved and we want you involved. I would try a more soft, influential effort to get a diverse amount of people on board with this idea and this form of messaging. And then I would show up at the convention and say, hey, we've been doing this thing for almost a year. We've got a lot of people involved. We think that this is a better messaging strategy than what we're seeing over here. And I would let people vote on what they wanted. And maybe it would win and maybe it wouldn't, but at least people would have a choice. And that would be how I would show up. And quite frankly, even if people didn't want to go in that direction, I would still have a standalone thing that was elevating libertarian voices anyway. And so why, like, would it really even matter? It would be a nice to have the party resources to support that type of messaging. But if they don't want to go in that direction, then that's fine too. Because like in New Hampshire, like it really is about saying to people, I have this idea. I think this is a good idea because of reasons X, Y, B, and Z. Do you want to get on board with this idea or not? And because there are about 8,000 different libertarian initiatives in New Hampshire, some libertarians are going to want to get on board with something, some libertarians are going to get on board with other things, and that's just the way it goes. Do you know what I would not do if I was trying to take over the Libertarian Party of New Hampshire? I would not come in like a bull in the china shop and demand that everyone agree with me, because that's not going to work. That's just not how it works here. But I would try to more soft influential style, and that's exactly what I'm doing, and that's what I'm working on now, separate from the party, separate from all this bullshit. I don't want to be involved with the Free State based stuff because I think they've gone too far and I don't like the way they're behaving. I don't want to be involved in the Mises Caucus stuff because I think they're being ridiculous. So separate from all this stuff, I was trying to do something else anyway, and that's what I'm going to keep doing and keep focusing on. Anyway, I did think that there was a possibility of maybe we can align these two things together and work together on that. And so I called Jeff back on Wednesday and I said, okay, Jeff, I'll do this thing. And I already have some ideas around it and I'd like to talk to you about it. Now, Jeff never called me back. And we're going to get to that in a second, because by the time I had messaged Jeff on Wednesday, March 22nd, I didn't know this at the time, but the purge of the New Hampshire Mises Caucus was already underway. All right. So Jeff apparently couldn't wait a few days to hear back from me. Not that I'm going to really matter in this, and you're going to see that in the course of the events, but like he had already started purging the New Hampshire Mises Caucus probably a couple of hours before I got in touch with him to say, okay, let's do this. I wasn't aware that that was happening because I was not in the Mises Caucus group. But I got access to the Mises Caucus group later because my husband was in it. We're going to talk about that. So let me walk you through the timeline. Around Wednesday, around 1:42 p.m. Eastern Time, Jeff Douglas stormed into the Libertarian Mises Caucus group, and he started purging people from the group almost immediately. 8 minutes later. And the very first thing that Jeff Douglas said, and I do have the receipts for this, we're going to walk through them in a minute, when he stormed into the group was, I'm here to kick ass and chew bubblegum, and you know the rest. So he was not coming in a way that was about discussion or understanding. Jeff immediately made it an adversarial environment with everyone else in that group. And you guys are going to see this, but the group was basically like, hey, Jeff, what's going on? What are you doing? Do you want to have a conversation? The group was very, 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 very conciliatory and patient with Jeff. And you're going to see that once we get into the receipts. They tried for 4 hours to reason with Jeff. It was like a Herculean effort so far as I'm concerned on their part. They were trying to be nice to him. They were saying, Jeff, this isn't the way you go about things. And Jeff was just being antagonistic the entire time. He's like, you guys are showing us disrespect. How dare you? You just want to be jokers. Blah, 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 blah. He was being mean and aggressive and adversarial. And because of that, people started leaving the group. And also, Jeff at the same time started purging people out of the group every time someone said something that was not what Jeff wanted to hear. So in the midst of all of this, like I said here, I contacted Jeff literally as he was mid-purge in the Mises Caucus, but I didn't know that because I wasn't in the group. And I said, hey, Jeff, okay, let's do it. And Jeff texted me back and said, no, Carlin, don't worry about it. I've got 2 hardcore mecox that are on board, and I'll let you know if I need anything from you. And I was like, what the hell? And the reason I was like, what the hell, was because I knew Jeff was lying. Because again, the Mises Caucus quote unquote brand has been pretty tarnished in New Hampshire because of all the adversarial bullshit. And I knew Jeff was lying when he told me he had 2 hardcore mecox. And I later proved to be right because I later found out from Michael Heiss what the name of both of those people were. I called one of them. He didn't even know he was going to be offered a state organizer position, and he wasn't open to taking it anyway because he's tired of all this bullshit too. And the other one has since said that he feels it would be best if the Mises Caucus dissolves in New Hampshire. So Jeff was flat out lying when he said he had 2 hardcore mecox who were totally on board. And then I started pushing and prodding Jeff because I knew he was lying. I was like, why are you lying? What is going on? And Jeff basically told me that, number one, I was never involved in the Mises Caucus, which again was news to me, considering I have supported the Mises Caucus unwaveringly for 2 years. I have spent thousands of dollars out of my own pocket supporting the Mises Caucus. I wrote about the Mises Caucus in my book. Anytime the Mises Caucus has wanted me to do something, I've done it. I have never argued with them. I have never made like controversy with them. I've never done any of this. So it was news to me to hear from the national coordinator of the Mises Caucus that I was never on board with the Mises Caucus, which is I've donated the Mises Caucus money. Like, it is patently untrue. And so, to be quite frank, it was a little insulting to hear that after 2 years of helping and supporting these people, that it was their perception that I was never involved. In addition to that, Jeff told me basically that my spiritual beliefs tarnished the brand of the group and that they didn't want to publicly associate with me. And again, my spiritual beliefs are literally taught by Jordan Peterson. My spiritual beliefs are not controversial in any world that is outside of low energy and low vibration political buffoonery who tries to take everything and twist it grossly out of context to mean something it didn't mean. And so I was flat out told that I'm essentially not to have, like, I am not allowed to have spiritual beliefs that I'm talking about in the Mises Caucus if they don't align with Judeo-Christian beliefs, which seems a little weird to me, being that we're talking about libertarians, and being that my spiritual beliefs don't hurt anyone, and being that if you're offended by my spiritual beliefs, which again, no normal person is offended by this, they are the basis of cognitive behavioral therapy. Jordan Peterson talks about them all the time. No one else in the real world is offended by this. But if you are offended by this, guess what? You don't have to engage with them. You don't have to believe them, and they harm no one. So I was told that I was bad for the brand. This is 2 days after he told me he wanted me to be an organizer, and that they couldn't possibly associate with me, and that I had never been involved in the Mises Caucus anyway. All right, that's not so great, but let's keep going. The final purge of all of the members in the New Hampshire Mises Caucus started at 6:11 p.m. on Wednesday. And basically what happened, and again, I am going to show you the receipts for this, is Jeff just removed everyone from the Mises Caucus group. And the Mises Caucus group is how the Mises Caucus is organized. All right. And so if you're just removing everyone from that group, you're basically killing off the Mises Caucus in general. Now, the Free State Base Caucus, which is made up of the people that have been really adversarial to the Mises Caucus, basically when everyone got purged out of the Mises Caucus group, a lot of them started moving over to the other signal group called the Free State Base Caucus. This, again, is something I am not in. I don't know what's going on in that group. I don't want to be involved in it. I find this attitude, again, not from everyone in it, but from a couple people in it, to be way too toxic. I don't want to be around it. So I have no idea what's going on there. But what I do know is that a half hour after Jeff Douglas purged everyone from the Libertarian Party of New Hampshire Mises Caucus group, they ended up stealing the New Hampshire Mises Caucus Twitter account. The Free State Base group stole the Twitter account, and they posted a tweet basically showing that they stole the Twitter account. Now, I do not condone the stealing of the Twitter account. However, it happened half an hour after Jeff Douglas purged every person in New Hampshire from the Mises Caucus. And there's a reason that happened, and I'm going to explain about that later. Now, the following day, Jeff Douglas and Michael Heiss told every single Mises Caucus organizer in the country via their private Discord that they had purged everyone from the group because the Twitter account was stolen. So Jeff Douglas lied. Jeff said that the reason that he purged every single person from the Mises Caucus group was because they had stolen the Twitter account. That is not what happened. That what happened was Jeff purged everyone from the group, and then half an hour later, they stole the Twitter account. And they told a whole bunch of other lies to every single Mises Caucus organizer in the country too. And again, I have the receipts to back this up. And the reason that we know this is because screenshots of this got leaked into a libertarian discussion group called Libertarianism at Night. And then once it got leaked into the libertarian discussion group, someone sent them to me. That's how I find out about it. So and I got, quite frankly, pretty pissed because, again, Jeff Douglas lied about me in those screenshots. And what they're saying is that I had come to them and like begged them to be a Mises Caucus organizer. That's not what happened. That's not the truth. And so I was pretty pissed. And at that point, I published my first article about what happened because I had been lied about to every single Mises Caucus organizer in the country, and I didn't like that so much. So once I published my first article, Jeff Douglas, again, national organizer for the Mises Caucus, continued to smear me. He continued to run around the internet saying Carlin was never involved in the Mises Caucus. Carlin is bad for the brand. Carlin is lying to you. And the Mises Caucus is still alive and well in New Hampshire. Carlin is of low character. She's doing all of this to hurt us. She was never on board with us. And come and join the Mises Caucus in New Hampshire. Now, the Mises Caucus is dead in New Hampshire. I cannot emphasize this enough. The Mises Caucus, because of what happened last week, is completely dead in New Hampshire. Oh, Nick, he lied to you too? Nick says he lied to me. He said he only removed 3 low character people. Then I showed him the screenshot you have of how many people are removed. Yeah, Jeff Douglas is lying. He's lying flat out. And not only did Jeff Douglas lie about me, but, and this is the part where I really kind of decided to show people what happened. Jeff Douglas not only lied about me to every single Mises Caucus organizer in the country, Jeff Douglas contacted my mother. Now, I have been smeared 19 ways from Sunday on the internet. I have had people lie up and down about things that I've said that I never said, or things that I've done that I never did. I have had hit pieces in major publications written on me. Do you know what's never happened to me over the course of the last 3 years? I have never had someone contact my mother and lie about me to my own mother, who, by the way, had no idea what was going on with any of this. And yes, I do have receipts to show that Jeff Douglas contacted my mother. I tried to handle all of this stuff privately. I had a conversation with Michael Heiss, in which Michael Heiss basically yelled at me the whole time for reasons past my understanding, because I wasn't involved in any of this. And I had conversations with Jeff Douglas, in which Jeff Douglas told me that I was bad for the brand and that they never wanted to associate with me 2 days after he asked me to be a Mises Caucus organizer. And so I did try to handle all this privately. And even after Jeff Douglas contacted my mother, and even after I got a hold of the entire chain of events of the purge of the Mises Caucus, I contacted Michael Heiss privately and I said, Michael, I have the timeline of events. Jeff is lying to you. And I'm going to publish this unless you rein him in and get him to start telling the truth. And when I contacted Michael Heiss and told him this, I was told that I was a hysterical drama queen and Michael Heiss was no longer going to communicate with me. Okay. Well, I think it's kind of interesting that you think I'm the hysterical drama queen, because I'm not the one running around contacting people's mothers. That to me is unforgivable. When you start bringing people's family into this and just belligerently messaging people saying, Carlin is this, Carlin is that, Carlin is this, Carlin is that, after I have supported you people for 2 effing years, put to the tune of thousands of dollars, and you're telling me I'm the hysterical drama queen? All right. All right. Paul says, I was removed from the Libertarian Mises Caucus Facebook group last month because I called out our state organizer for being a shadow chair and our convention planned in the dark. And that's the short story of it. Paul, are you in Michigan? I don't know what's going on in Michigan with all that stuff. I'm not really but is that where you're from? So as of right now, there is no Mises Caucus in New Hampshire. If anyone is saying, oh, you're from Massachusetts, gotcha. If anyone is saying that there is a Mises Caucus in New Hampshire, they are flat out lying. There might be the existence of a signal group, and that signal group may have 1 or 2 people in it, but that doesn't mean there's a Mises Caucus presence in New Hampshire, because both of the people that they said, the hardcore Mecox that they got to be state organizers, neither of them wants to be a state organizer now. And one of them didn't even want to be a state organizer anyway. And so, oh, Nick says, I sent you a screenshot of what Jeffrey said to me. It's in my DMs. Let me look that up real quick, Nick. And we're going to walk through the receipts of all of this, guys. So don't worry, sit tight. We're going to do a little nice long stream today. I just want to see what Incognito here sent me. Okay, let's pull this up. Thank you, Nick. So this is what Jeff Douglas said to Nick. Did you make yourself the only admin and then purged everyone who disagreed with you? No, Ben Weir gave me the admin and then left. That's a whole other thing with Ben Weir. I'm not going to tell that story, but that is quite a thing that they did to Ben Weir. Let me tell you what. I specifically went in there to remove 3 low character people who have turned their backs on us, hijacked our Twitter, changed the name to the Free State base, and posted anti-Mises Caucus stuff and changed the Gmail password. That's not true. And I will show you evidence of that. Jeff removed way more than 3 low character people. And the Twitter thing, what the biggest part of all of this is that Jeff Douglas is flat out lying about the timeline, because the Twitter account was not stolen until after Jeff Douglas purged every single person in the Mises Caucus. And the timeline is very clear. And I'm going to be honest. Here is what I think is actually happening. I think that Jeff Douglas made some extremely rash and stupid decisions. And then I think that Jeff Douglas lied to Michael Heiss about what happened. Michael Heiss is the chair of the Mises Caucus. He runs the whole thing. Jeff Douglas is basically like his number 2. All right. So Jeff Douglas made some really stupid decisions that he was not talking about with Michael Heiss. Jeff Douglas then lied to Michael Heiss about what happened. And because Michael Heiss and Jeff Douglas are buddies, Michael Heiss just believed without questioning it at all that Jeff Douglas was telling the truth. I also don't think it was helpful that Michael Heiss has basically been at war with members of the Free State Base Caucus for months, and so Michael Heiss was probably feeling like everyone in New Hampshire was adversarial to him, which was not the case. There were a couple people who were adversarial to him, who were being very vocal about that were pissing Michael Heiss off. And so because of those few people, Michael Heiss automatically believed everything that Jeff Douglas said, even though Jeff Douglas flat out lied about the timeline. And because of that, Michael Heiss told everyone in New Hampshire to piss off. Jeff Douglas told everyone in New Hampshire to piss off, and then basically lied to every Mises Caucus organizer in the country about what happened. But I think that all of this could have actually been stopped at several instances had Michael Heiss just listened when I DM'd him the other day and told him, or texted him the other day rather, and told him what happened. But instead of listening to me, Michael Heiss told me I was a dramatic, hysterical drama queen and that he wasn't going to talk to me anymore. All right, well, then you get what you get, Michael. When I originally talked to Michael Heiss the first time, all I said to him was that I wanted an apology from Jeff for saying that I was never involved in the Mises Caucus, because I'm sorry. That was a giant slap in the face. It was a massive slap in the face. I have never done anything to these people. I have never shit-talked them. I have never been involved in any of this. And yet, I'm being told that I'm bad for the brand, bad for business, no one wants to associate with me. Then why was I spending 2 years of my life doing this? If you guys all thought I was so bad. You know? So that's the overview of what happened.